I'm Brandon Warren, and coming up, we'll talk about how a Warden rancher dropped everything to help whenever he saw smoke billowing from a nearby ranch.
But first, this is a live look outside from the haze-filled Stockman Bank weather cam as the next 7 days will be filled with a triple threat of smoke, sun, and storms. Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Russ Riesinger. The heat is on, and right now, so are the storms. Let's get right to Chief Meteorologist Ed McIntosh for the very latest on the weather situation. Ed?
I think today everybody was like, oh, please, can we get a little break from the heat? And then it comes in the form of very strong winds. You can see this with Doppler radar. And I got to apologize for the little glitch in the data there, but I wanted to show you the storm as it moved in from around the Big Timber area, Columbus, and then continues to move in towards the Billings area. Now, if we zoom down just a little bit, where you pick out this green line, that's where the strong winds have been developing, gusts to around 60 miles per hour. Some pockets of a bit of rain, could even have some small hail. And then out ahead of it, all the green shaded areas are basically smoke in the atmosphere, and that's where we're seeing the real problem areas right now. So if we freeze this out, you can see those cells continue to move through Billings, Shepherd, out towards Warden, Lockwood. You'll continue to watch at least some influence from that wind in the next short while. If storms approach, take safe cover. A lot of weather to talk about. We'll have details in a little bit.
Fires continue to burn across the state. Q2's Brandon Warren just happened to be there when one broke out on a Warden farm.
While living in rural Montana, neighbors might not be the first word that comes to mind, but according to one Warden rancher, they'll always be there when you need them.
It's all part of being a part of the community, and so everybody pitches in to help each other out. This is just an extension of that. You see smoke at a neighbor's place or whatever, you go to help out. And you know, like my uncle said before, it may be on your place the next time, you know, but it's, I guess family down here isn't just who you're related to, it's your neighbors, it's your friends, it's, you know, it's a community.
Clint was getting ready to work in his field for the day whenever he noticed that a fire broke out on a nearby farm. He rushed back home to get his water truck and help. Clint says fires have been happening frequently near Warden because of the drought.
Extreme drought is just that. Any little thing could set a fire off. Anything can burn right now, and it will.
Out in about an hour and a half and burned 88 acres. Crews included the Warden Volunteer Fire Department and a helicopter that dropped water. In Warden, Brandon Warren, MTN News.
Currently, every county in Montana is facing some sort of drought. One man is dead, another behind bars tonight after an early morning crash in central Billings. 21-year-old Clay Wacker of Hardin faces a charge of vehicular homicide while under the influence. Police say a man in his 30s, whose name has not been released, was driving a minivan around 2:30 this morning when it was struck by a pickup driven by Wacker. Wacker was driving south on 6th Street West at the time. The minivan was going east on Lewis Avenue. Driver of the minivan pronounced dead at the scene. Wacker was taken to a local hospital to be treated for injuries, but witnesses tell us he was able to stand up and walk after the crash. We now know the name of the man who died in Wednesday's mobile home fire at Casa Village. 85-year-old Donald Ellison was found deceased in his motorized wheelchair on the exterior porch of his home. The coroner has yet to determine the cause of death. That fire, which broke out about 6:30 Wednesday night, burned about half the home. No one else was injured in the fire, and a cause has not yet been released. Senator Steve Daines came to Billings today to talk with those involved in criminal justice here in Billings. Q2's David J. has more on a roundtable that focused on violent crime and drugs.
Senator Daines met with local law enforcement at the police evidence facility. He found out a lot of crimes are related to drugs, and a lot of those drugs come in from the southern border.
I had a knife from a 1947 homicide, and we put it in our museum.
Lieutenant Mitch Hart gives a tour of the facility.
Every time I hear drugs, we understand pretty immediately as a city we can't tackle that problem by ourselves.
Billings City Administrator Chris Kukulski and Senator Steve Daines brought the group together to talk about crime concerns.
These young people that have grown up in Montana, have they just recently moved here? What do you sense with what's going on there?
I would have like individual case detail, or I could say we had a very shocking downtown shooting right next to a very popular restaurant at about a little after 11 p.m. when people would be in downtown. Right. They were all transplants to our community.
Violent crime has increased in Billings from 2019 to 2020, with assaults up 34%, robbery up 33%, and homicides up more than 400%.
And Chief, it looks like this year we're tracking to perhaps hit another, sadly, record number.
Correct. We're on pace right now at a little over mid-year, so hopefully it can turn.
And Chief St. John talked about the possible solutions.
We are heavily engaged in treatment, prevention, education to break that cycle. If there's no demand, okay, then the market goes away. So we're trying things on the other side of it, to help break that demand cycle.
In my opinion, if we can slow down the drugs coming across from the border, that we can probably start getting a better handle on the crime that's going on in our communities.
We have to continue to let the members of law enforcement make their voices heard, to not politicize this, but to get down to what's the source. And of course, it's going to take more than just stopping the source. This is about demand, it's about treatment, it's about education.
In Billings, David J., MTN News.
Brian Gutkin, the Director of Department of Corrections, District Judge Mary Jane Nisley, and Yellowstone County Commissioner Don Ostlund were also part of that meeting. Another lawsuit has been filed challenging the constitutionality of a law passed by Republicans in the 2021 Montana legislature. ACLU Montana filed that suit on behalf of a transgender woman from Billings and a transgender man in Bozeman. The law imposes new requirements on transgender people who want to change the sex on their birth certificate. The new law says anyone who wants to change the sex on their birth certificate must now get a court order showing their gender has been changed by a surgical procedure. Under previous law, you'd need only to present an affidavit to the state. The lawsuit filed in State District Court in Billings says the new requirements are an unconstitutional invasion of privacy for transgender citizens. It also says the law improperly singled them out with requirements no one else has to meet. That law passed the legislature this spring on fairly close votes, but all the yes votes came from Republican legislators. The head of the Montana Department of Environmental Quality stresses the state will go after bad actors who leave behind pollution and mine waste, but he feels it's best to pin enforcement on legislative reform rather than a single case. This comes after the state took heat this week from conservation groups after DEQ announced it would not pursue a claim against Hecla Mining CEO and President Philip Baker Jr. DEQ had previously launched a case against Baker in 2018.
This case is messy and it's expensive, and there's risk that should the case go forward that we could end up with an outcome that none of us want. This case has demonstrated the law is unclear. So I'm committed to fixing that. We've spent 3 years and still haven't gotten to the merits of the case. I think that demonstrates that the law is unclear.
The groups, including the Clark Fork Coalition and Trout Unlimited, had supported the state's original complaint against Baker, tying him to the failure of the Pegasus gold mine at Zortman, which left behind cyanide and other contamination. Hecla disputed Baker's involvement. However, opponents tried to argue the bad actor law should prevent Hecla from further development of the Montanore and Rock Creek mines in northwest Montana. Dorrington believes a bipartisan effort, including various stakeholders, could clarify the law through new legislation.
I think fundamentally I want people, Montana citizens and industry, to know that we are not letting go of pursuing bad actors. This is a tough case, and so setting that aside, we will absolutely pursue bad actors that walk from their responsibility to Montana citizens.
Dorrington says DEQ is working at learning lessons from Montana's management of mines in the past and putting those into practice. Up next on tonight's MTN 530 News here on Q2, a Montana community shows its support by coming together to keep an important piece of history rolling. We'll explain.
Hi everybody, Scott Breen on opening ceremonies night at your Big Sky State Games. Coming up, we are one-on-one with former Olympic javelin thrower Mary Osborne Andrews.